Hello there. My name is Christian and I'm recording this from Hamilton Hill in Western Australia. Lately I've been thinking that it could be really fun to write down different things that I've been finding interesting. I've been inspired by other people who have been doing the same online, and I've been taking lots of notes of different things I find interesting, and I've been putting off beginning, waiting for a perfect start. So I'm going to stop doing that and I'm just going to begin. I recently was listening to a storyteller speaking online, and he brought up this old concept of kleos. Have you heard of this before? So kleos is a notion that the ancient Greeks had, which you can take it to mean glory or reputation, or the position you hold in other people's imagination. Irrespective of what you're actually like, it's the position, the image that you have in other people's minds. A way that I kind of understood it, the way that he described it, is it was so important to the Greeks that suppose, for example, when people say that you die twice. You die the first time when you literally die, and then the second time when you sentimentally die, when the last person says your name and thinks of your face. That's the second death. Now, my understanding of what he was getting at is that the second death is as important, or maybe even more important, than the first death, such that people would die in order that the second death would take a lot longer to occur, centuries or millennia down the track. Nowadays, we might think of this in terms of fame, prestige, or status, or notoriety, being famous, basically. So we think of, for example, Kurt Cobain, Amy Winehouse, Jimi Hendrix, and Achilles, funnily enough, people who burnt bright and died early. The reason I've been thinking about it is because there's a kind of tearing in my values and the values that I see in the world around me, between celebrating and discouraging kleos. So, for example, I'm a storyteller, or rather, I'm an author, and I tell people stories. I write books about them, and increasingly people contact me saying that they want to share the story of an ordinary person, a barista, or somebody that works in the butcher. All of these people who have stories that deserve to be told. You know, the contemporary idea is everybody has a story, tell your story, which I find true, but also a little bit dubious, because of course some stories are deserving of kleos, right? And others are just sentimental. The storyteller, this guy that was talking about kleos, he described it as a kind of vice in the way that it's depicted in some stories. So, for example, in the Odyssey, you have Odysseus, who is returning from the Trojan War. He and his men wash up on the shore of the Cyclops, Polyphemus, I think his name was, and they escape by blinding Polyphemus. And as they're leaving, the blinded Cyclops is screaming and he's roaring and he's saying, "Who did this to me? At least tell me your name." And Odysseus, of course, because kleos is important, couldn't stand not to answer that question. He had to answer that question, so he called back, "It was Odysseus who did this to you." And then, of course, this was one of the early examples of "Do you know who my daddy is?" coming over and biting you in the ass, because Polyphemus, the Cyclops' dad, was Poseidon. So, of course, he goes and tells his daddy, and then Poseidon makes the journey home for Odysseus and Odyssey. It takes him a very long time to get back to Ithaca and get back to his missus and his kid, because he couldn't stand leaving a blinded man without his name. He had to say who it was that blinded him. So it's kind of a cautionary tale of be careful of spouting your own reputation when you don't know who somebody's daddy is, for lack of a better way of putting it. Now, think about that as a kind of cautionary tale. Another way that it was described was Achilles, whose mother was a god. One privilege of that was that Achilles had an idea of how his life was going to go. He knew that he would have a choice between living a long life being relatively unknown or dying very young and being known for evermore, as we do know Achilles forevermore. And of course, because of Kleos, he chose the latter, and later was met by Odysseus, and Odysseus crossed paths with him in Hades, in the underworld, and he basically asked Achilles, was it worth it? And Achilles said, what was it? It was better to serve a poor man in life than be a king in Hades, in the underworld. Which basically sounds like regret to me. It sounds like dying for Kleos wasn't necessarily worth it. Coming from Achilles, that's a pretty big deal because he had the most Kleos. Okay, I've been thinking about this and how it's translated into contemporary culture. So we will tell people, and a lot of the shows that I watch, which are supposed to be inspiring, will be telling people, burn bright, go out, forge your own legend, create your own life, let the world know who you are. I watched a fantastic movie last night called K-pop Demon Hunters, and the theme of that was, I am golden and I'm going to let the world see me shine. So the world can know, the world can grasp my Kleos, my authenticity, my Kleos. There's a bit of a difference here because I don't think the Greeks were so concerned with authenticity. I think we're obsessed with that. We want to market things to people, we want them to buy products that will make them feel like their identity is more expressed, and so appealing to a sense of authenticity is a wonderful marketing mechanism. But I'm digressing. So the question I've been thinking of is, what is my attitude towards Kleos? If I was invited to leave my city, I love my city so much. If I was called away for a very, very great opportunity, away from my family, away from my loved ones, away from my wife and my dogs, would I do it? If I, for lack of a better word, smoted somebody and they demanded my name, would I tell them, or would I find it cowardly rather than wise to leave without letting them know, just in case I have no idea who their mummy or their daddy is? We call that politics here. I've just been thinking about this. I don't know what my answer is. I know that I'm biased by our Christian tradition, which is very much about celebrating the meek. If somebody becomes extremely wealthy and successful, but they still drive a piece of crap car and just live in a small house, we celebrate them. We think that that's by default noble. Whereas if somebody, quote unquote, gets too big for their station, too big for their boots, we see that as them changing and being a matter of being tarnished by fame and fortune and notoriety, and we look down on that. It's all very Christian. So there's a conflict here between Kleos, status, fame, notoriety. Perhaps nowadays people will call it opportunity, which is often code. Opportunity is the means to the end, and the end is Kleos and wealth. So if you hear somebody say, travel forward for opportunity, you can see that as, conduct your own odyssey, if you'd like. So we have all that on the one hand, and then we have humility, contentedness, being content with one's corner of the world, and knowing that wherever you go, there you are anyway, and so being content with yourself and not seeking recognition and admiration in others, which of course is antithetical to Kleos. So yeah, I'm approaching 10 minutes. I've just been thinking about this a lot. I'm sure I've gotten it all wrong. I'm sorry to anybody who's better educated than me. This is all new to me. I find the appeal of Kleos to be an indication of a vice or a shortcoming, but I'm recognizing that that is indeed a bias, as it all is. So I'll keep thinking about it. Maybe I'll get back and revise in the future. Thanks for listening.